Alright. Alright, first of all, today's port is the same as last week's, 912. Next week I'll change it to 913. It's not going to change much. It's just to let you know what's in track. If you go to my website, you will see that I've already put today's PPT files online. There is a very good reason for this. Today's PPT files are online because you are going to need them. So my advice to you, download them right now. And as we are going over the presentation, you can keep up with me on your copy of the slides, because the stuff we're doing today is mission critical. Until, man, you're not the one who should be worried. Alex is sick. But right now he doesn't care, apparently. The stuff we're doing today is basically the first chance you're going to have to perform parallel computing on GPU. So until now, we need to revise what we've done. You guys have been practicing your C, C++ gradually. I know that you're all experts in C when you came here on the first day, but it's good that you have a chance to practice between then and now. We've written codes which copy data from the host to the GPU and back. We can allocate memory on the GPU, and 2 weeks ago, we wrote codes which performed computation on the GPU using a single thread. That's sequential computation on the GPU. Now we know that GPU has thousands of processors on board, so using one thread to do your computation is a massive waste, unless you're going to be running like 20,000 simulations at the same time, in which case it's fine. So today's course is going to build on the sequential code that we wrote 2 weeks ago, and we're going to start running in parallel today. But before I get too far ahead of myself, I need to review the mission of this course. This is important. This course is not a course on programming. I'm not here to teach you how to program C. I'm not here to teach you how to program CUDA. I'm here to teach you how to do engineering calculations on the GPU and how to do engineering calculations using multiple cores. This is not a computer programming course. You do need to program to do this, but the goal of this subject is to teach you how to solve engineering problems on the GPU and using multiple CPU cores. So this is very different to a course that computer science would give on GPU. A computer science course on GPU would just teach you the programming. That would focus on the theory and the C code that you need to write to get these things to run. This course goes one step further. We focus on what you can do with that knowledge. So that means basically when we examine you, when we do the exams, I'll be examining your ability to solve an engineering problem. So 考试的时候我会给你一个机械工程还是一个工程的问题 and you're going to solve that engineering problem for me. You're going to do it on the GPU for this test. So the focus will not be on the programming, the focus will be on whether or not you can solve the problem. So the exam is going to have two parts. One part is going to ask you some theory questions. You might need to do some hand calculations to solve some engineering problems. All of these problems 应该是跟 PDE 有关系 because we've been focusing on using PDEs to solve our engineering problems. Not every engineering problem needs a PDE. Your minor assignment, the pipe flow, those are based on PDEs, but we don't see them because we assume constant conditions in the pipes and steady results. But all of the other things we're doing are transport equations, heat transfer, these are all PDEs. So that's what we're focusing on. So I'm hoping that from the time you've started to now, you've been keeping track of the methods that we've been using to solve our engineering problems and that you have working codes ready in your directories now. Every week we have a case where we're able to apply an example to solve an engineering problem. We've done steady heat transfer, we've done unsteady heat transfer, we've also done regression. You have working codes of these. You should know where they are on your hard drive because during the exam you can go onto your hard drive because it will be online and open book. And you can use the codes that you write now to help with your exam. So all of the codes that you write during class time every Wednesday, you can take to your exams. When I write the exam, I'll be remembering that during the exam you can use this information, which means the exam might look a little bit hard because it is going to build on the things we do in class. So, on this slide I say maintain and practice. Maintain means you should probably have a very nice file structure and a very nice layout of all of your files in your home folder. If you don't have folders, all of your codes are in the same directory and they all have the same names and you can't see what's what. During the exam, when I ask you to find your regression code, you're going to have trouble finding it. So make sure all of your files are laid out neatly, or at least you have notes on hand to know which code does which. 这个也可以，你也可以用手写哪一个课做哪一个工作，因为什么东西都可以带进去那个考试。Practice means practice. I've been checking over the last couple of weeks to see how many people log onto that server every Thursday to Monday or Tuesday. 现在从礼拜四到礼拜二 not many people log onto the server. That's fine because it means I can use that server to do my work. So, by all means, I'm hoping that you guys are practicing on your own servers, right? Everyone has their own GPU and they're practicing at home. That's what I'm hoping is happening. I'm going to assume that you're practicing at home right now on your own GPU devices. But I would recommend you start practicing because your exam is coming up. When is the exam? In 3 weeks' time. Yep, 3 weeks' time. Next week, we're going to have a guest speaker from Kaohsiung Dinao come in to teach the class. So the government supercomputing laboratory will send a researcher to teach next Wednesday's class. He'll be teaching applications on GPU. He'll show you the source codes and then show you how he wrote them. Actually, he didn't write them. I wrote them and then gave them to him. But that's okay. He will tell you that when he comes in. He's a very nice guy. His name is Guo Fang'an, and he used to be my colleague when I worked at the supercomputing center for 5 years, a long time ago. The week after that, we will do special memory, because so far you've only used global memory. GPU has other kinds of memory, some of which we will see today. After that, I'll teach you how to use that special memory. Then you have your exam. That exam will basically examine you on everything GPU, and you'll be solving at least one engineering problem on GPU. 如果你要看也要给你什么问题，看去年的考卷。If you go to the website, actually 应该是有2年前的考卷，最近2年的考卷都在那里。So go see what the exams ask you to do. It will be similar. I will ask you to draw graphs of temperature versus time, or temperature versus space, or something versus time and space. 你要画图, so you actually have to write the graph by hand on the exam paper. I'm hoping that you will use MATLAB to look at the answer first and then copy MATLAB's graph onto the paper. All right, good luck with that. Today's goal is quite simple. Today, we're going to discretize this PDE. And you guys are going to parallelize it and run it on GPU. You might remember from the very first week, or the second week, I think it was the first week, at the end of the class, I gave you some extra possible work that you might finish if you have time. That is the transport equation for some quantity U. If this is a smoke modeling problem, then U here represents smoke concentration, number of particles per cubic meter. It's a density. Alpha here is the wind speed that is carrying that smoke. D here is a diffusion coefficient. How do you say diffusion coefficient in Chinese? Yeah, I'll use the English one, thank you. Diffusion. So this one helps the smoke move because of some transport like wind, a constant speed. This one here causes the smoke to spread out. So by solving this equation in 1D, we can predict how smoke will move. It is a useful tool. In engineering, we actually solve the 3D equation of this to model how pollutants and smoke travel in real life, in cities and other places. I'm not going to ask you to do the 3D one yet. We will do the 3D one, but not today. Today you're going to do the parallelized computation of the 1D problem. Alpha is a constant wind speed, D is your diffusion coefficient. S is a source term. That source term basically controls how many particles of smoke per cubic meter per second are produced in any part of the flow. In this problem, we're going to have a small region producing particles and the rest will not be. So basically we have a fire and we're going to model this. The discretization is quite complex as a matter of fact. There are three terms here. du dt, we're going to use a backward difference, or forward, sorry, this is a forward difference in time. U at I at time step k plus 1 take away u of I of k divided by t. dt is a representation of this. The last term we'll talk about, this is an easy one, this is a central difference approximation, second order accurate. This is also in your notes. Actually, this my English is broken today, I'm sorry. This guy here is this guy here in discrete terms, which we can prove using Taylor series expansions, and we did this in the first class if I'm not mistaken. This guy here is a trick. Du dx, this expression here is first order accurate, it is a backwards difference. Someone might be tempted to write as an alternative that a more appropriate discretization for du dx, or alpha du dx, is alpha u of I plus 1 take away u of I minus 1 divided by 2 dx. And they would be right, that is a more accurate representation. This is second order accurate. This guy here is first order accurate. Why would we use this instead of this? The problem being is that this discretization of du dx contains no u of I. It only looks at the left and right hand side. Now what does this really mean? With regards to this expression here, we know what u of I plus 1 is doing. We know what u of I minus 1 is doing. U of I could be having a party with alcohol and cake, and he could be running around naked on tables or something. 但是它没影响到 du dx. So actually this is a seriously bad problem. If the value at any point does not influence its own value for du dx, it's possible to develop spurious solutions like this in our flow field. We can see here, if I want to work out what du dx is here, we look left and right, divide by 2 dx. 这个是跟这个差不多一样大，所以 du dx 是0. I look at this result, it's not 0. U of x is doing something crazy, but using this discretization we can't see it. So, unfortunately for us, the mathematical reason for this is that we can't use the central difference to solve a hyperbolic PDE. This term is hyperbolic. So unfortunately we cannot use central differences. So we have to do something else. In this case we've used what we call an upwind scheme. Upwind scheme basically calculates the value of this derivative based on the direction the flow is coming from, or the signal is coming from. In this case the flow is positive, so if I want to work out how much smoke, or the gradient of the smoke in any direction, I'll basically say, oh, gradient of the smoke, the wind is coming from this way, I'll look over here to see what the gradient of the smoke is. Because the gradient of the smoke du dx here is going to be here very soon, because it's transporting. So we use a backwards difference for this. The resulting scheme is stable, but wrong. We will go into more information about how we can improve this later in the course. If you really want to know, you should take a course on CFD, and they will teach you about upwinding. But that's your mission today. You guys are going to steal my MATLAB code. You're going to make that run on GPU. And how are you going to do this first? Well, this is a MATLAB code. You're going to have to write a regular C code and run this on the CPU first. Some of you might be tempted just to take this MATLAB code and right away try to build a CUDA code without testing it using a regular serial code first. This is a very bad idea. I need to explain why. When you're a little kid and you're learning how to do things, you go one step at a time. When you're learning to rollerblade, or roller skate, you've got wheels on your shoes, right? It's a very dangerous activity. You don't just go to the highest hill and rush down the hill as fast as you can. You learn how to skate first. So, whenever we're developing an application like this on GPU, we always develop it in small steps. The first step being we produce a code on CPU that will run and give us an answer. Because remember, we are interested in the application. This is the mission of this course. In your exam, when I give you a problem like this and I say, use the GPU to show me what the smoke profile looks like at t equals 0, for some things at some time. The profile will look the same if you use GPU or CPU. So even if you can't do GPU programming, you can still get an answer and show me the smoke profile. Then when I ask you to write the GPU code, you're in trouble then. But you can still show me an answer, because we are focusing on the application here. So today you're going to take that MATLAB code, write a CPU code, run it, check the answer. How will you check the answer? You're going to put your hand up and say, is this the answer? And you will know, if it has this, smoke does not do this in real life. So you know that's going to be wrong. But if you really want to check to see if the answer is right, show me and I'll tell you if the answer is right. Or look at the person next to you. If you both have the same answer, you're either both right or both wrong. So once you're sure that your answer is correct or you both have the wrong answer, you're going to take that CPU code and make it run on GPU. You're going to copy and paste all of the memory allocation, free memory, CUDA, copy from host to device, copy from device to host. All of those functions are identical to what we previously did. So the only thing we have to do today is change the kernel where we do our computation. Let's look at that. Before I can show you how we're going to use the GPU to do computation, I need to show you basically what the hardware looks like. Now we've already reviewed some of GPU hardware, but what we haven't reviewed as well as I would like is the CUDA abstraction of that hardware. So there are 3 ways we can do parallel computing on the GPU. 3 different modes. Each of these modes has their applications. Some research will use different methods for parallelizations, others will use others. Our mission is the 3rd one, but I'm going to teach you all 3. The first one is where we engage in thread-based parallelism. This is exactly identical to how OpenMP and conventional MPI computing does parallelization. Then we do block parallelization, which is a different animal altogether. It's special to GPU, and you'll see why once we start looking at it. Thread block parallelization is the hybrid of those 2. If thread parallelization and block parallelization get drunk and have a baby, it would be that, thread block parallelization. It is our mission actually, because it is the one which makes most use of all of the resources on the GPU. Then you're going to take the codes I give you today and you're going to solve that smoke problem with the MATLAB code I gave you. It shouldn't take you long. It is a very good example of the kind of thing I'll ask you to do in an exam. So let's have a look at our GPU. First of all, if you go buy a GPU, this is not what you see. When you buy a GPU, the biggest thing you see is the fan and the system of heat exchange mechanisms they have on the card. Do not take it off. But if you're feeling brave, or it's not your GPU, or the GPU is already broken, do that one. If the GPU is broken, then you can take it off. This is the kind of thing you'll see. Stuff. These capacitors explode when they break. I've seen it happen. This is the GPU core. This part of the GPU device is made by TSMC in Tainan and Hsinchu. All of NVIDIA's stuff is made by TSMC, so half of AMD stuff is also made by TSMC and packaged at Ruyueguan, ASE in Kaohsiung. I know because my wife helped them do the packaging. So we've got this GPU core. This is where all of the computational power comes from on the GPU card. This is where the magic is. This is the only thing that NVIDIA makes. When you buy a GeForce GTX 1060 Ti or whatever, the only thing on that card that is made by NVIDIA is this chip here. The rest of this thing is what we call a printed circuit board. That's PCB. That is not made by NVIDIA. That is made by the people who want to take NVIDIA stuff and sell it on as an OEM manufacturer, or just OEM. That is Acer, MSI, all of the companies that manufacture GPU cards make this board. So that's why you can buy a GTX 1060 with different amounts of RAM on it. Because that company, maybe ASUS, has taken the design for the PCB, changed it to add more memory, changed the power controllers, changed the clock speeds on a lot of the other stuff, changed the buses. The only thing that is consistent is this core here, which they buy from NVIDIA and stick it on the board. So why do I show you this? There's something very important you need to see here. The GPU core here is just a chip with the CPU cores and some small amounts of cache inside. When you buy GTX 1080 Ti, none of you guys are buying that card with your own money because it's too expensive. But how many, does it come with 8 gig of RAM? The 1080 Ti? How much RAM? Lots of RAM. The RAM is not inside the core. The memory you get on a GPU card when you buy a GPU is provided by the company that manufactures the PCB, is located elsewhere on the board. Here. What does that mean for us? Every time the GPU performs computation, if it wants to access memory that you've allocated using CUDA-malloc, that information is stored in the memory on the PCB, not inside the GPU chip itself, which makes using that memory slow. That's all you need to remember for now. Let's abstract this. So if you look inside the GPU core itself, the GPU core is a very complicated device. It is this here. What we have in the GPU core is a very large collection of what we call streaming microprocessors, SMs. Now, streaming multiprocessor, sorry, my English. Streaming multiprocessor, there, it's written in English right there. I'm not reading the slides. These SMs, there are a large number of SMs on a GPU. Each SM is actually a small, separate unit, which is manufactured separately from the other SMs. They're all assembled together on the die itself at a later point in time. Each SM is comprised of a large number of things. So if you take one SM here and you zoom in, this is what you see on the left-hand side. So each SM inside has a lot of stuff. Each SM has a very large number of SPs. SP is a streaming processor. Streaming processors are the ones responsible for most of your graphics. When you plug in a monitor to your GPU card and you fire up a game, what's the best game that you can get now? Destiny 2 is out. The Destiny 2, can you buy that in Taiwan yet? Oh, Swana. I'll have to go back to Australia, buy it in Australia and bring it back here. When you play these games, or when you do graphics, all of the graphics are done on the streaming processors. So those SPs are designed for graphics computations. What does that mean? All of the computations performed by SPs are single precision floats. They don't do anything else. They are designed for that. Now, problem being, about the time Half-Life 2 came out, exactly that time actually, people weren't satisfied with using single precision for graphics computations. The reason being, if you have a texture on a surface which is at an angle and you've got light shining off it, unfortunately single precision is not enough to do the reflection calculations or custom shading. So NVIDIA decided to put some extra DP units on there. DP is a double precision computation unit. Those units are expensive and slow because most of the computations done on the GPU are for simple graphics. Not every game requires advanced graphics computations. Most of the operations we do on the GPU are quite simple and SPs are good enough. But for those custom units which require higher precision, they can perform higher precision on the double precision units. This is important because when you use floats in your code, and you run your code on the GPU, if you're using float, it will run on SP. If you've got double, we cannot use the SPs to perform the calculations. The SPs, the streaming processors on your GPU, do nothing. And the only thing doing something will be the DPs, if you're using double. So when you fire up your codes and you use the GPU to perform computations, if you're using double precision, the majority of the compute power on the card is idle. It's not doing anything. It is a waste. Ideally, you've got a program which makes even use of double and single precision. This is not an easy thing to do. I will teach you how, but at the end of the course, on the last day, with 10 minutes to go, after all the exams are finished, I will show you how, because I will not examine you on that. It is horrible. You just have to remember that single goes on SP, double goes on DP. There are normally between 5 times to 2 times the number of SPs than DPs. The latest P100 GPU has exactly double the number of SPs and DPs. So the single and double performance compute is closer. But if you look at a Titan, if I'm not mistaken, the ratio is closer to 3 or 4 times. Might even be 5 times. I need to double check. Hang on, I think I did check. There. Single precision is float, SPs do single. Doubles do double. There we are. So let's see. The K40, it has one per SM. Every streaming multiprocessor has 192 single precision streaming cores and 64 double precision streaming units. So that is, my math is crap. That looks like 4 times to me. It's closer to 3 times. Yeah, 3 times. That's about right. I'm pretty sure 3 times is right. It's exactly 3 times. Look at that. Do the math. So on that one, it's 3 times. Then you've got the next one, the M40, which is a Maxwell GPU. And you've got 128. Oh wow, this is a big difference. 128 single precision streaming processors and 4 double precision. No one's performing double precision compute on that GPU device, let me tell you. Not unless they just want to throw away their money. The latest P100 is much better suited to double precision. Now, what is the real question here? There are other things too. The special functions unit is a special unit designed to perform special functions. I'm going to tell you, man. That was a deliberately vague description of what the unit does. I love you, Jose. So, in the SFU, there are a large number of functions which we perform often in CUDA. Functions like square root, sine, cos. These are functions which we use often in computing. And we use these functions often in graphics. The square root, sine and cos, we use these all the time to assist with display computations. So the special function unit is hardware that is designed to perform those fast computations. Now, in CUDA, when you call the square root function, you will not use the SFU. However, we can use something called an intrinsic function on the GPU, which is underscore underscore square root x. Underscore underscore square root x, this is an intrinsic function. Intrinsic functions are much closer to the hardware. If you write this in your CUDA code and run it, it will not run the regular square root function, it will run the fast square root function and it will run on the SFU. And it will be quick, maybe 15 times the speed of a regular square root function. So through the use of intrinsics like this and sine, cos, do you see a pattern here? You have a function, put 2 underscores in front of it and see if there is an intrinsic equivalent. These ones will run quickly on SFU, the answers will be wrong. The SFU is designed for speed, not accuracy. So when we perform square root on the SFUs, it will do the fastest, dirtiest square root computation it can. Sine, fastest, dirtiest sine computation it can. Scientific computation, not so great. But if you only need an approximate value, these are awesome. A very good example of an approximate value for most CFD solvers is the computation for the speed of sound. That's a square root. Half the time, the value of our actual value of A does not heavily influence the numerical behavior of our code. In this case, if we can get away with 2% error in A for a five times increase in speed, that's fantastic. That's wonderful. So this is the first of many compromises you're going to make to perform high-speed GPU computing. Through the use of special units, you can use the SFUs and intrinsic functions to rapidly increase the speed with which you perform computations. You have to use the intrinsic function. The compiler will not do this for you. The compiler's like, I don't want to do your dirty work, otherwise you'll blame me for things if things go wrong. You have to be the one to write this. So good luck with that. That's just some small advice. So we've got that. Underneath, texture and L1 shared memory and register files. In a CUDA code, when you create a variable, like if you have a kernel, like global underscore underscore global underscore underscore void, you've got your GPU function. Then inside you create an integer into A. That A lives here. Inside register files, inside register memory, which is inside the chip. You can see this memory is inside SM, which is inside the GPU core. So any variable that you declare inside your GPU kernel is going to be quick because it's located in core. The biggest problem is, for most GPUs nowadays, this is 64 KB large. We have 64 KB of memory here, and that memory is shared across all these SPs. Now, I've only drawn, how many SPs have I got here? 16 SPs. Remember the graph we just saw? The table, sorry. Look at that. The K40 per streaming multiprocessor has 192 streaming processors per SM and has 64K of register memory. So that means you have to be very careful that you're not going to run out of register memory inside each of your kernel functions. All right, the real reason I'm showing you this. Each GPU has many SMs. Each SM has many SPs. We need to find a way to take our work, this simulation of smoke, and we need to share it twice. We need to share it first across all of these SMs. And inside each SM, we need to share it across our SPs. So we need to break our work down twice. Last week, we had 3 sexy volunteers add up numbers for us. We broke up that work once. We took our list of numbers and divided it into 3, and then we added it together, brought it back together. This case, we need to divide it twice. We need to first give it to the SMs, and then SM will give it to all of these SPs. This is not automatic. You should know, actually, nothing is automatic with the GPU. We have to control everything, so we're going to provide instructions on how we can do this. Now we can see, with this many things here, the 3 options we have for parallel computing are: option 1, thread-based parallelization. We pick one SM, and with one SM, we give the various SPs in this SM some work to do, and we share the work here. But we only use one SM. That's thread parallelization. The second option, block parallelization. We give all of these SMs work, but we only use one SP inside each block. The last option is the best one. Everyone works. We give work to each SM, and inside each one, we have many SPs working. So what's up? Oh, the last one. Oh, the GPU load is measured by the occupancy of all of the units. So if we use one SM, even if we use all of the units, if we only use one SM, our load is still practically 0 because all the other SMs are idle. So the total load will be how busy all of the SPs are in every SM. The overall load. So obviously our mission is to make sure that every SP and every SM is being used for computation. But before we get that far, we need to introduce to you some concepts so that we can perform these computations on SMs and inside each SP. CUDA has a very special method for passing work. We know we have to divide the work up twice. What we do is, CUDA prefers you to pass information to the GPU in blocks of work. We call those blocks blocks. These are packets of work. So we basically take our large problem and divide it into a large number of blocks. Each block of work has a lot, we're hoping that each block of work has a lot of work inside. Now, that block of work is going to be tackled by separate SMs. I think I talked to you about this. Anyway, because we want every block of work to be passed to an SM, and every SM has a large number of SPs inside, we need to find a way to divide each block of work down into other pieces of work. So what we do is, we take our large problem. The problem that we're executing at any time is called a grid. This is what we pass to the GPU when we call a function. Inside the grid, we have many blocks of work, and inside each block, we need to divide our work up again into, this time we use threads. These threads are processors which will run simultaneously on each SM. Each streaming processor inside the SM will handle one or more of these threads at any time. So the parallelization is maximized. Each of these blocks is going to go to a different streaming multiprocessor, a different SM. Inside each SM, the SPs are going to work on these threads. In CUDA, we can control the number of threads per block. So we can control how many threads are here, and we can also control how many blocks we use. So today, first, we're going to show you how to create threads inside a block and write a code. Then I'm going to show you how to create many blocks, and each block will have one thread. And then I'm going to show you how to create many blocks with many threads. And that is the one we want to run on GPU. So last week, and the week before, when we were doing elementary, simple computation on the GPU, we were using single cores, sequential code. 我们结果我们放那个 code 在 GPU 上的那个 code， 就是跟我们 serial code 完全一样吧，我们就有放那个 global 在前面。So the same code was put on GPU and we ran it on the GPU, but we still needed to tell the GPU how to share the work. Basically what we did, we told the GPU that we were going to create one block and that we were going to have one thread inside that one block. So the GPU would take our function that we wrote last week, pick an SM, and then inside that SM would pick a single SP. So I can tell you right now, the codes that we were running last week are the slowest damn GPU codes you will ever see in your life. The GPU has thousands of SPs. Last week, they were doing nothing while you were running your codes using single SPs and a single SM. It is an incredible waste of work. So most of the time, the GPU last week was sitting idle, even though all of you guys are all submitting jobs to the GPU. So this is a C2075 Tesla GPU device. We have maybe 20-something people in this room submitting jobs at the same time. That device still has hundreds of SPs, hundreds. It can't feel a thing. Today we're going to make it feel something. Our mission today is to use more than one SP, more than one SM. We want to make that GPU cry, hopefully not catch on fire. I've only ever... NVIDIA lent me a K80 once and I made it catch on fire. That's the last time NVIDIA gave me a GPU. So, today, our mission, our plan is like this. We're going to write a program. That program is going to perform some work in parallel, but we're going to create a single block. That single block will be passed to one SM, but we will have multiple threads inside that block. So inside that SM, we're going to use more than one SP. That's code 1. Code 2, we're going to create many blocks. These will be sent to different streaming multiprocessors, but each one will only use one thread. Which one's better? About equally crap, actually. But actually, from a theoretical perspective, the second one is better. Then finally, we're going to take these two theories. They're going to get drunk and have kids. You don't have to be drunk to have kids. And we're going to create blocks with multiple threads. And then we're going to send this instruction to the GPU, and the GPU is going to be busy and finish our work much faster. So, number 1 first. But before I show you how to write any code that's going to run on parallel, we need to agree upon an algorithm to compute. We have many options. I could give you a heat transfer code, or a smoke simulation code, or the Navier-Stokes equations. Instead, I'm going to pick the easiest code that you could possibly come up with, a scalar multiplier for a vector. So inside this code, you can see what we're doing. Pretty easy. We have a vector. It has n elements. In this case, I call it LE. ELE is the number of elements inside our vector. We have to double the value of each one. So we're basically taking an array A, multiplying it by 2. So this is a vector computation. We have a large array. Each element we need to multiply by 2. 一个 element 影响不到另外一个 elements， 每个 element 的结果只有上它自己。所以 这样很棒啊. This is embarrassingly parallel work. This kind of thing is perfect for the GPU. If you had a billion elements. But in this case, we're going to be working with 100 elements. So here's our CPU code. I've called this CPU code. I have a very good imagination. The name of this function is CPU vector multiply. I could probably do better than that, but that's about all I could come up with. A is a pointer to our array. At the moment, this array is on the host because this is the serial code. This is the CPU code. I'm going to modify that now to run on the GPU. How do I modify this to run on the GPU, you say? I do that. I chuck global in the front. That's pretty much all I do, except I need to remember now, when I put a variable in here for this A must be a device variable. It must be a variable that is allocated on the GPU card. I'm hoping that over the last couple of weeks you guys have tried to tell the GPU to perform computations on the CPU variables. If you haven't, try. Show me the errors that you get. It is very good practice for you guys. So, if we have our GPU code now that does this thing, we have a for loop, we have one thread in one block using this implementation. So this is exactly the same code we talked about last time. It's just a very naive translation from a regular serial code to this one. Because this is a code that we use to calculate one thread in one block. If we have one thread in one block, that means that that streaming processor inside that one SM has to do all the work. 什么工作它都要做. There you go, I said it. So that means we have to iterate over all of our elements from 0 to LE minus 1. That's every one of them. We need to start thinking about this now because if we have two SPs inside one SM helping to do this, we're going to share that work. Some of the work will go to one SP, some will go to the other one. 你觉得他们会自己决定是我们这么分成那个工作吗? No way, man. We are the ones who decide how we share that work. Anyway, remember, for now this is a single block on a single thread. We can see that it is a single thread and a single block because we've got 1, 1 here. That's what this 1, 1 means. One block with one thread. That is a serial computation. You can see we're referring to DA here, our device A, and N is the number of elements in our array. You can see I've allocated my memory. You can see I freed my memory. I need to copy the information to the device first, and I need to copy it back. So everything there is not new. This is 2 weeks ago, this code. So this is just a way to start our day-to-day. Here's the entire code. So in case you're desperate and you can't find this sequential code for this to run on GPU, here is the entire code. We're going to come back to this. In this example here, 你可能有记得两个礼拜前我们写这个 code 的时候 we wrote two codes, a main CPP file and a CU file. 所有的 GPU 东西我们放进去 CU. And all of our CPU stuff we put in CPU. But our CPU was empty. Our main.cpp file had the int main file and just some functions. It didn't do anything serious. This code is one file, GPU underscore code.cu. This is the power of my imagination coming through again. I actually do have a very good imagination, but not when it comes to naming my codes. So GPU code CU is the name of our code. It's one code. So if you want to copy this, just type it out. You can't copy it because it's a picture. Type it manually. In one file, here's the start. The top goes down here, goes down here. Main is at the bottom. You can put main at the top if you want to do function declarations at the top and put definitions underneath. Anyway, there's the whole code. So this code, you can see straight away, our GPU function, this function here, we can see that any thread running this code is going to need to do all of the elements. So this is obviously a sequential code. It's going to run on the GPU with one thread and one block. If I ask the GPU to run this on many SPs, 可以啊, but they don't share the work. Actually, every SP does the same job. 这个很夸张. What will happen? one thread, his name is Tim. Tim, SP Tim will pick up this thread and take A, 1A 肯定是5, times by 2 就是10. And Tim is finished. Tim says, oh, I'm finished my job. Yeah, see, it gets to here and we're done. There's another thread. His name is Bob. He's going to do the same work on the same element. So he's going to take that variable, which used to be 5 and was multiplied by 2 by Tim, and it's going to multiply it by 2 again to become 20. So you can see if we take this code and we give it many threads, the threads are going to be fighting to do this work. They're all going to do the work, which means that this computation is going to happen more than once. So when you run this on the GPU, if you want to do something crazy, I encourage you, change one of these to 2 and see if you get the answer you expect. What's going to happen is that we have multiple threads on the GPU doing the same work. So we can see straight away, if this is 1, 1, this function here must do all of the work, single for loop. If this is not 1, 1, we need to change this. Otherwise, the threads will be doing the same work. So how are we going to do it? Well, we need to control how the work is shared. We are the ones responsible for that. So in this case, we have an array A. A has 100 elements. 从100到99. If I look at DA 100, that is a segmentation fault because it is outside our bounds. Because in C, we start from 0. Don't forget this. It's going to come back and bite us today. Today, everyone is going to get a seg fault. I promise you. Because I'm going to make you do one. So, we have 100 elements. Today, we're going to give a single block 4 threads. Thread 0, 1, 2, 3. Threads names also always start from 0. So if we have threads on the GPU, threads inside a block, threads always start with ID 0 and go up to number of threads minus 1. So if we have 4 threads inside a block, their names are 0, 1, 2, 3. And we're going to share the work. We're going to say, well, we have 100 elements. Hey, thread 0, you're going to do 25, and you're going to do these 25. Thread 1 is also going to do 25, but not these 25. 他会有自己的 25. He has to have his own 25. And each thread is going to do 25 and have his own piece of work. So that means we need to take our original code and change it twice. We need to change our for loop, 因为以前一个 thread 会做100个 elements. 但是现在每一个 thread 会做25个. So we have to change our for loop so that we do 25 instead of 100. Then we also need to tell each GPU which part of A to work on. If we just change it to run on 100, if we just change it to do 25 elements instead of 100, but we don't tell each thread which part to work on, it's going to end up performing the computation on the first quarter of our array. And again, the threads are going to fight. So let's have a look. We start with our serial code. So this is the GPU code that's designed to run with 1 thread in 1 block. Let's change it. We need to share the work across 4 elements. So our for loop changes from I equals 0, I is less than LE divided by 4, I plus 1. So each thread is going to do 1/4 of the work. But this code is wrong, right? If we use this code, every thread will perform the same computation on the front of our vector in the first 25. And you're going to get the wrong answer again. Bad news. So we need to fix this. We need to find a way to tell each thread which section of A to look at. But to do this, we need to find a way for each thread to know who he is. Before we can do anything, every process runs on the GPU, he needs to know his own name. 他知道要有办法知道他是谁. So we have a way of solving this. There is a very special variable in CUDA called threadIDX.x. That is a protected variable. You cannot declare a variable by the same name. And it is always there. It is part of the CUDA system. Inside a kernel, If you call this variable thread idx.x, it will return to you each thread's individual thread ID, his name. If you have 4 threads on this device, that TID is going to be 0, 1, 2, or 3. So we insert this command, this code, int TID is equal to thread idx.x. If we have 4 threads in our block, that is going to give 0, 1, 2, or 3. Now, if we know that the thread IDs are 0, 1, 2, or 3, we can find a way to share the work. If we have thread ID 0, 它可以看前面 thread ID 1是25到49 thread 3是50到74最后一个 thread 是75到99 So that's what we're going to do. Break the work up just like this. Thread 0 should do these ones. Thread 1, 2, 3 will each have their own section of A. How do we define this mathematically? Well, it's quite easy. The index which we start computing at is just the thread ID times 25. This thread starts at 0. This thread starts at 25. This one starts at 50. This one starts at 75. So we shift our index. So our for loop is still the same. I equals 0, I is less than 25, I plus plus. But we adjust our index here by this amount index. And we do the same over here. 这样的话，我们可以决定不会有2个 threads 一起传一个 element。每个 thread 完全会有它自己的方式处理它自己的东西。That way we're not fighting. This is what we call data racing. If we have 2 threads trying to access the same element, then we have data racing. We don't want data racing. Now, there's more to data racing than just this, but we'll get there. So, here's our code. How do we run this code on the GPU and let it know that we have more than that many threads? Well, we need to change one of these numbers. We wrote 1, 1 here before. That is 1 thread with 1 block. It's 1, 4 now, 1 block with 4 threads per block. 4 threads total. 1 times 4 is 4. So this kernel will be passed to one SM. That SM is going to create 4 threads. It will keep 4 SPs busy, and each of those SPs will do the same function. All right. This code will run. Absolutely. This code is correct. It will compile and run. It will give us the correct result. 如果, if I want to say, hey, SM, I want you to use 10 threads instead of 4. We have to change all the things. So if we want to use that code to run 10, we write 10 here, but we have to change this, right? Because we wrote this code assuming that each one would do 25. See, that's why we write 25 here, and we divide this by 4. What we should be doing is finding a way to divide by the number of threads in the block. 这样的话，我们可以自己算每个 thread 应该是看哪里还要看多少。Because if we change the number of threads here, we have to change the whole code. And that's a very bad way to write a code for GPU. Because when you're writing codes for GPU, you will have 2 GPUs. You have the GPU that your 老师有帮你买那个几万块钱的那个 GPU， 最好的全世界的最快的 GPU， 你没有那么多钱，没办法自己买那个 GPU. Then you've got the GPU at home that you didn't tell your girlfriend or boyfriend about that cost 1000 NT. That one is a crap GPU. And we want to use less threads per block on that one. So when we go home, we want to take the code that we wrote at school, run it on our cheap GPU, and we just want to change one thing in our code and still run it on a different GPU. So we need to find a way to change our code here to automatically detect how many threads are in a block. 这样的话，我们可以自己分享那个工作 automatically. Let's do it. I don't want to manually change the code. There is another variable in CUDA that will tell you how many threads are in the block. There are many variables in CUDA that I haven't told you about. This is another one, blockdim.x. You should all be very familiar with this. 这个 d, 如果你写小的 d 的话, what will CUDA say to you? he will say, what the hell is this? That big D is very important. Copy it exactly how I've written it here. That is a small x and a big D. Naga thread ID yeshra, thread IDX, naga I data, naga ID the D shout D. You'll get the picture very soon. So, block dim.x is the dimension in threads of our blocks. It tells us how many blocks are in the threads. Do not ask me what that x means yet. Normally, when I start teaching people what that x means, I see students start to run for the window and jump outside. Now, you probably survive here because it's only the 4th floor. GCSE is much more dangerous. That's a 6th floor. And I will teach you what the x means after the mid-semester exam, or closer to the mid-semester exam anyway. Just block dim.x tells you how many threads are in the block. So now we have a mechanism. Thread IDX with the big I tells us the thread ID. Block dim.x tells me how many threads per block there are, which I call TPB because I do not have a good imagination. TPB is threads per block. Now, 我们的工作要分享 across this many elements. So, elements per thread, 就是 LE divided by TPB. This is like the best code ever, right? 很清楚吧? I hope so. Then we're going to iterate from 0 to those many elements. Our index 是样算的，我们以前是25 times thread ID, 现在变成 LE per thread times TID. This code is a good code, it runs. Can anyone tell me what the problem with this code is? In this case, we have n equals e by. Before we picked 4 threads. 这样的意思，每个 thread 会有25个 elements， 这样很公平。如果我们有100个 elements， 但是我选15个 threads， 怎么办？ We can't divide the work evenly. Now, of course, the GPU is very good at taking care of this. By the end of the class, you're going to know how I manage this. This example is only to show you how we can perform computation on the device in parallel using multiple threads. At the end of this course, you're not going to use this code. At the end of this class, you're not going to use this code because this only uses one streaming multiprocessor. It's still not fast enough for us. So we still need to beat this. But if you want to run it, and you want to see what happens when you set a number of threads that is not equal divisible across n, here is the entire code. Again, the entire code is one single file. And again, I've called this file gpu_code.cu. Here is how we compile it, here is how we run it. In this case, I'm not compiling to an object, I've just compiled directly to the executable using the -o. I do not normally recommend doing this, but in this case, we have a very simple example and we can do it. So, again, our main function, let me tell you, our main function doesn't change much, but there is something important here. Normally, in our main function, we use a wrapping function to call our GPU function. We create another function which is defined in our CUDA code to call our GPU for us. We don't use, normally, these smaller than and larger than arrows in the main function. This time it's okay because we're using NVCC to compile the main code. So, 我知道看起来, it looks like C, right? It is not C. This is CUDA. And we're using the CUDA compiler. It's just that the language CUDA is so close to C that from this code there's no difference. So, knock yourself out. There is a single code. The very first thing that you're going to do right now, log into the server, copy this code. I want you to do that right now. So right now, every student in this class is going to be doing a parallel vector multiplication of an array, a scalar multiplication of an array, and you're going to show me. Get it working, show me your code, and then we'll continue. A very good place to start would be the code that you wrote 2 weeks ago. You can modify that code to produce this code, so copy that into a new folder and get cracking. Time's up. Time is a cruel mistress. We never have enough time to do the things we want to do. And look at what time is doing to my hair and my face. In this example here, assuming that you got this code working, and most of you guys have done very well and it's up and running, you have created a single block, and inside each block there are 4 threads. When you send that instruction to the GPU will move or create a set of instructions for one of the SPs to use, and then we'll execute those 4 threads on one of those SMs. If we have 4 threads inside our block, there's a good chance that there will be 4 SPs working together or working to solve that problem. We can't actually guarantee that that's the case, but we are more than likely going to see that that will be true. But our problem being, even if that block has 192 threads inside, and our SM, our streaming multiprocessor, has 102 CUDA cores per block, per SM, sorry, it still means that most of the SPs in most of the SMs are idle. So in this case, we can see all of these SMs are empty. We need to fill them up. So we need to know how to create work on the GPU. Come on, computer. Here we are. So instead of creating one block with four threads, we're going to create 4 blocks, each with 1 thread. Each of these blocks will go to its own streaming multiprocessor, and then one of the SPs in each streaming multiprocessor will handle that work. It's pretty much exactly the same, only we're going to share the work across different SMs. So each block is going to have 1 thread, thread 0, and each of those blocks is going to take care of 25 elements again. So this time, we can actually modify the code we just wrote directly. This time we have no interest in knowing what the thread ID is. The thread ID is always 0 for each of these situations. Each block has 1 thread and his name is 0. So we don't need to know what the block we don't need to know the thread ID, we need the block ID this time. If we want to share the work, we need to know 2 things: the block's ID and how many blocks we are using in our simulation. That way we can share the work across the blocks we have and do the parallel computation. Is everyone ready? I don't want to say something important and have someone miss it. This case, we're sharing the work across different blocks. The block ID is just block idx.x, assuming 1-dimensional blocks. If we want to know how many blocks there are, last time we used block dim. This time we're using grid dim. Grid dim tells us how many blocks we're using in our grid. So basically we just have to change the code. We replace thread idx.x with block idx.x, and we replace the block dim with grid dim, and we should be able to use that code directly. So here is what it looks like when we call it. Here's our new kernel. This time we need blocks per grid, not threads per block, so I've changed the variable name to BPG. That is the griddim.x. BID is the block ID, and that is obtained using block idx.x. And the rest is identical. Before, where we're using threads per block, this time we're using blocks per grid, and nothing else has changed. But when we call our stuff down here in the main function, when we actually call our kernel, when we send the kernel to the GPU for computation, we need to specify the number of threads and the number of blocks. 1 each end you'll share 1, 4. We wrote 1, 4 before. This time we're writing 4, 1. 4 blocks, each block with 1 thread. If you run this code, you're going to get the same result. I'm not going to ask you guys to write this code because it's pretty stupid code. We're not using anywhere near the amount of computational potential that we could be using. There are thousands of SPs on most GPUs, good ones anyway. So the comparison of what we did, first time we used 1 SM and 4 SPs through 4 threads per block. Second code that I just showed you, this one here, used 4 SMs with 1 thread per block. We want to get these two together, take them to a party, let them get to know each other, let them get married, have kids, and then find a way that we can use both strategies to maximize the parallelization. We want to share this work across many blocks, with each block doing many threads. Now, this is the fun part. When you eat a banana, some people peel the banana by taking the skin off the top and then peeling it down. Some people peel the bottom and there are many ways to kill a cat. Is a terrible English phrase. Where did that phrase come from? Have you heard that phrase before? Forget the English I just taught you then, because that's a horrible thing to say. Yeah, there, that's right. Same root. So, here, we want to find a way to share the work. There are many ways to share the work. I'm going to show you one way. Is it the right way? It works. There are other ways. So, what can we do? What we really want to do is to make sure that as many SPs as possible are being used. 我们是要决定所有的 GPU, 全 GPU 在帮我们做这个计算。The best way to do this is to, if we have a vector problem like this, ask each SP to do exactly one element. If each SP does one element, then to solve any vector sum, we will be using as many SPs as we can with that problem. That's the most efficient way to parallelize our work. So what we need to do is take our 100 elements and we need to create 100 threads. We're not going to use one block with 100 threads. We need to take those 100 threads and spread them across different SMs. So we need to do something like 10 blocks with 10 threads per block. 这样的话我会有100个 threads. This is the easiest way to do. Is it the right thing to do? Sometimes we want the GPU to work a little bit harder than that, but our mission here is to maximize parallelization, not to maximize GPU occupancy yet. So one element is managed by one thread. Now what does that really mean for us? Go back a little bit. Here is our previous for loop. The for loop looks about the same, no matter what. We have a for loop, each thread has its own work. This time, if each thread is looking at exactly one element, 如果它只有做一个计算而已, do we need a for loop here? No way. 每个 thread 做一个计算而已，这个没有啊，没有 for. If every thread is doing one calculation, then we don't need a for loop. Every thread 它会自己处理它的一个东西. So that for loop is going to die. We'll get ready for that. So each thread will do one element, so there's no need for a for loop. But we still need to find a way for each thread to know which part of the array he will work on. Luckily for us, we have a way we can work this out. If we have NB, well, it's NB minus 1, that's a typo, NB blocks from 0 to NB minus 1, we can map which thread will access each element. There are many ways we can do this. One very nice little formula that we can do, I'm going to show you soon. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, we need to decide the best way to share this work. Normally, when we do a computation on the GPU, the limiting factor for us is the number of threads per block. This is because if we put a complicated function on the GPU only has 64K of register memory and only 64K maybe or 48K on some GPUs of shared memory. That means if you put a large function on and give it to a single SM, it might run out of memory. So the number of threads per block is important for us because we are limited by how much each SM can do. So we normally pick the number of threads per block. 那个是我们 consider. 如果我们有一个问题，有 n 个 elements, and 我们自己选一个 threads per block, 那我们结果就是我们可以选需要多少 blocks 处理这个工作. We can compute how many blocks we need. Then the GPU will create these blocks and give them to the streaming multiprocessors automatically. to finish the computation. So if we have n elements and TPB threads per block, then we need that many blocks to finish the problem. This equation is wrong, right? There's a problem with this equation. 我们有讨论过，如果 n 是100 TPB 是15 if n is 100 and TPB is 15, if you do this computation, it's going to say that you need 6 point something blocks, right? That's a problem. You can't have 6 point something blocks. You need 7 blocks. Now, if you have 7 blocks, each with TPB threads, if you have 7 blocks each with 15 threads, that is 105 threads in total. We need to be very careful here. So there are two things we need to do. One, we always take into account the fact that n is not going to be evenly divisible by TPB. You never know what n is. Your professor is going to ask you to run a calculation on the GPU with 1 million cells, and you're going to do it, and then show him the result, and then he's going to say, okay, do it again with 2 million cells. Or do it again with 1.1 million cells, or something crazy. You're going to need to change n, and there's no guarantee that you can change TPB. TPB is a constant pretty much. For most of your engineering calculations, you're going to be using 128 threads per block, maybe 256 threads per block. If it is a really horrible function, 64 threads per block. That's pretty much fixed. We already know what the optimal values are for those. So the number of blocks you're going to need, there is a way we can compute it. You can't compute on 6 point something blocks, 6.663 blocks. You need 7 blocks. We can use the floor function to help us. Why do we use the floor function? Because C, every time we assign an integer with a floating point computation, it automatically rounds down. So this floor function is built into C. We don't have to use it ourselves manually. If we code that ourselves, we can code it with this line here. When we write the C code, all we have to say is int blocks per grid is the number of blocks, is n plus threads per block take away 1 divided by threads per block. And C will automatically take that floating point result and round it down to an integer because number of blocks per grid is an integer. So if you have, I just want to make sure you guys are clear on this. Int A equals 15 divided by 4. What will A be equal to? 3. If you print the value of A, it will say A is equal to 3. Give it a try if you don't believe me. You don't need this because I'm just telling you what it's equal to. That's not code. This is the code. Give it a shot. A, being an integer, will automatically take this result, which is like closer to 4, 3 point something something. That point something something will be truncated because this is an integer, not a floating point number, and it rounds down. We do the same thing here. This will, in the event where n is 100 and threads per block is 15, that will say you need 7 blocks to compute, which is pretty handy to know. But we do have to be very, very careful here. The reason being is if we use this formula to allow each thread to control an element of A, we are putting ourselves at a risk of a very serious problem. Now first, let's talk about this. Block dim x is the number of threads per block. Block ID x is its name, and this is the ID of the thread in each one. Block 0, thread 0 will start at element 1. Block 0, thread 1 will do 1. Block 0, thread 2 will do 2. Now, if we have, in this case, 25, let's say we have 4 blocks, right? And each block is going to need, well, how many threads will each block need if we have 4 blocks? 25 in this case, if we want to divide the work evenly across one unit. That means block 1, his first element, thread 0, will access element 25. So we need the thread ID, the block ID, and the block dim to understand how to set the formula. Here is one possible formula. It doesn't have to be this. There's another formula we could use if we wanted to. We could say this one does this one. This one might do this one. this one might do this one might do this one, and share the work that way. That is a terrible idea. There is a good reason why this is a terrible idea. You want the threads in a single block to access memory that is physically close together. This is what we call, in computer science, coalesced memory access. We want all of the threads in a single block to be accessing the same elements in memory. The reason being, if this thread wants to access this one, the CPU, if you say to your daughter, or let's say you have a kid, and you say to the kid, hey, there's a big box of M&Ms over there, and you tell M&M, everyone, if you don't know what an M&M is, I'll buy an M&M for you. You tell your daughter, hey, go to those M&Ms and grab me a red M&M. She's not going to grab one red M&M. She's going to go in there with her hand and just grab a whole chunk of M&Ms and hope that there is a red M&M inside. When the GPU wants to access DA in global memory, the controller is going to say, hey, thread 0 needs element 0 from DA. Go get it. The computer doesn't go get just that one. He grabs a chunk and copies it. This is called a fetch in memory. What happens then is that if we have all of our threads in one block working on physically close together memory, the controller is going to fetch a big chunk of memory from A, and then all of these threads are going to say, yay, the data's already here. I don't need to perform multiple fetches. If I fetch, if thread 1 attempts to access data that's not here, that's called a miss, and then the control has to go back and fetch another chunk of data. So by having different threads in this block work on different things, you're going to need to perform multiple fetches to get that data. You're going to have to perform fewer fetches if the access is close together. So coalesced memory access is a big deal. So this equation that I've provided here works on the assumption that threads in this same block are going to be working on data close together. So you can see here, let's say we're working with block 0, and this is 15 threads per block. Then threads 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 will all do elements 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all at the same time, all together. If we use a different formula to parallelize this work, we can, but you risk having uncoalesced memory access. So the solution, pretty much every code you're ever going to write is going to use this equation. My best codes do. It is a very reliable way of performing computation. There will be a chance for us to change this equation in 2 weeks' time before your exam. But practically speaking, every single one of your GPU codes from now until the day you die is going to use this line. Assuming that each thread controls one element. Sometimes we might want to allow each thread to control 2 elements, but then we start playing a dangerous game. So, I told you before, if we have 15 threads per block and we have 7 blocks, then in total we're going to be controlling 105 threads. But our array only has 100 elements. If we use this formula to calculate the index to our A array, some of those threads are going to try to access elements 100, 101, 102, 103, and 104. That is a bad thing. You only allocated 100 elements. Asking threads to access elements outside the memory we allocated is called a segmentation fault. Hopefully, everyone in this room has already had a chance to see a segmentation fault. The big problem is GPU 没有嘴巴 CPU 的嘴巴很大它有 seg fault 的话它会跟你说 many times, very loudly. The GPU, when it has a seg fault, tells you nothing. He just shuts up and does his job. Because the GPU is designed for graphics calculations. If you're playing Diablo 3 or Destiny 2, or what's another good one now? Far Cry 4 is a good one. Witcher 3 is old now, but still a good one. If you're playing those games and you have a visual computation and one of the threads has a segmentation fault when it's doing the graphics computation, how do you feel when the game crashes? Pretty bad. So the GPU is designed to say, keep going. So it happens. Sometimes you'll be playing a game and then the graphics will break. Have you ever seen that? The graphics in the game that you're playing just break and then everything looks funny or something doesn't work. If you've played Assassin's Creed, you know what I'm talking about. Seg fault. You have a seg fault on graphics memory, but the GPU wants to keep going. The GPU, if you have a seg fault on the CPU, man, that is a fatal exception error. You're going to get a blue screen and your game is going to stop right away. Half of the errors that you get in computer games are because of seg faults in memory on the GPU. So, how do we stop this from happening? If I is less than the number of elements, please go ahead with the calculation. If the I that we're trying to access is larger than ELE, that means that we are looking at threads 100, 101, 102, 103, 104. Naše threads are toshima. Nothing. They can't do anything. We have 100 elements in our array, and 100 threads are doing those 100 elements. We have an extra 5 threads doing nothing because we had 15 threads per block. That's okay. They can't do anything. They just have to sit around and wait. So, by placing this if here, we guarantee that we won't have a seg fault. Go ahead and copy this code. Please do not just modify the code that you just wrote just now. Create a new code and modify it to look like this. That way on the exam, when I ask you to write 2 codes and compare them, you've still got those 2 codes separate. Please create a new code, or just copy the one you just created and change this one to do the same thing. I'm coming, let me turn my mic off. All right, before you go too crazy, some of you are probably thinking, yes, finally, 老师有给我看一个拼写 code 在 GPU 上，我可以帮我老师做什么工作。We're not done yet. There's one thing I want you to do, and that is with n equals 100, with 15 threads per block, I want you to deliberately remove this if statement. So I'm going to ask everyone in this classroom now to create a segfault for me. So if we have 100 elements and 15 threads per block, that means we're going to have 7 blocks with 105 threads total, which means that with elements 100, 101, 102, 103, and 104, they will be accessing outside of our allocated memory. So by commenting if and this bracket here, you are going to be causing a segmentation fault on the GPU. I want everyone here to comment that if statement, recompile and run your code. I want you to show me what that segmentation fault looks like right now. Show me the answer. Of those of you who worked quickly, you've probably realized by now that deliberately causing a segmentation fault on the GPU did absolutely nothing. Your function still ran. You still got the correct example, you still got the correct answer in this case because threads 100, 101 to 104没影响到你的计算。我们这里做一个简单的 vector 计算，每个 thread 会自己处理它自己，跟其他的 threads 没有什么关系。So using too many threads here won't influence your answer. But we do have a segfault here. Our CUDA error says okay. All of our CUDA errors are fine. How do we then check to make sure whether or not we're creating a memory allocation error here? There is a tool that is available in CUDA called CUDA memcheck. It is a really handy tool to have. It is included with the CUDA installation. After you've removed this if and compiled your code, try running your program using CUDA memcheck. So type CUDA-memcheck space, then the name of your program using the /. It will run the program using the CUDA memcheck program as a buffer around your program. It will then analyze the access that your program has to GPU memory, and then it should be able to identify segmentation faults. It will even tell you which thread in which block gave you the seg fault, which is pretty handy to have because sometimes you really like to know where exactly your error occurred. So remove your if statement, recompile, run your code using CUDA memcheck. After you've done this and shown me, then you can work on today's problem, which is that smoke problem. After this is done, you are also going to use CUDA memcheck to make sure you're not causing any seg faults. Good luck. Show me when this is working. I want to actually see CUDA memcheck show you the seg fault.